certainly after 20 years, the Clive will know within reason most things about them. And the king is somebody that he doesn't like change. He likes the same people around him. And the fact that Clive's put his notice in, of course they're going to wish him well, and of course they're going to say, they're really happy about the time that he was with them. But you also guarantee that the king, even between now and then, will probably still try to do everything to convince him not to go.
As Buckingham Palace this evening has confirmed the King's most senior aide is set to retire. Sir Clive Alderton has spent nearly 20 years in the role. The palace say the King and Queen were deeply grateful to Clive for his tireless support and wise counsel over the years, and for the enduring loyalty that will ensure a smooth transition to his successor. If you're like me, though, you've never heard of him, so who is he and what has he done? Let's talk now to Grant Harrold, former butler for King Charles and host of the new show Royals Uncensored. Hi there, Grant.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks so much for making the time for us. Tell us about Sir Clive and the role that he's played in the King's life.
You're absolutely right, because I suppose this is one of the kind of roles that a lot of people think, who is this person? But a lot of your listeners will recognise him because he's been by the King's side. Certainly in most recent years, we've seen a lot of him since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. He actually was behind the coffin when you saw the King behind, obviously walking with the procession. Yeah. We've seen him at the coronation. So even you might not recognise his name, but if you look him up, as I say, a lot of people recognise him. And basically, he's the principal private secretary. So he is the top man, if you like. It's when I was there, that was, you always said when it was Prince of Wales, and directly underneath the Prince of Wales was the principal private secretary. So it's the top job.
So it's a political role, isn't it? He's sort of maintaining the golden triangle, they call it, don't they? Tell us about what that means.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's not really political. He's more, he keeps everything running. There's many different departments in the royal household, and his job is to bring all of those departments together, make sure they work together. He's a liaison between them and the King, and obviously the Queen. He does indeed deal with government ministers, people from the government, obviously on behalf of the King, as we saw recently. Again, when the King met the outgoing and the incoming prime ministers, that was Clive that was there to meet them. So. He's quite an important character, and I personally know Clive. I remember, I joined in 2004, I think it was. And I think from memory, I think Clive came along in 2005 or 2006, and his role then was one of the secretaries. I was trying to remember what his role was. I think it was something to do with foreign travel or something back then. But of course, as with all these positions, there's an opportunity to progress, and that's exactly what he did, as I said, to the top job.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that I said he had a political role and you were like, well, not quite. Within the royal household, there are all these titles. Yes. No, don't be sorry. You're right to correct me if that's the case. But within the royal household, there are all these titles and all these things. It's very formalised. But in his case, he does strike me, reading into it, as something of a political creature. He has been involved behind the scenes in Charles's speeches that he's given to the German Parliament, to the US Congress. Tell us about that.
I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, when it comes to the speeches, in fact, most of the things that the King does or is involved in, Clive is there to either assist. I mean, in fairness to the King, I have to say that the King does write all his speeches. Well, when I was there, he wrote all his speeches himself. I remember being very much around when that was going on. I think Clive's role is again to kind of go over them and maybe add anything or take anything out, or advise to take things out if there's anything there that he feels that maybe isn't right. So, he has got, as you said, I suppose in a kind of way, he has got a very political role within the royal household. But again, it's interesting because I thought the King will find it really difficult losing him, because the other thing about Clive's role is it's a trusted role. It's a bit like the personal staff. You have an amazing access to them. You get to know everything about them. You get to know what makes them tick. And certainly after 20 years, the Clive will know within reason most things about them. And the King is somebody that he doesn't like change. He likes the same people around him. And the fact that Clive's put his notice in, of course they're going to wish him well, and of course they're going to say, they're really happy about the time that he was with them. But you also guarantee that the King, even between now and then, will probably still try to do everything to convince him not to go. But obviously it's great that he's got this amount of time for the transition, because they've got to find somebody else that, again, not just somebody that can do the job, it's somebody that the king feels comfortable with, the king is happy to have around him.
Yeah, and of course there have been many situations where he's needed tact, haven't there, over the last 20 years? I suppose he came in after the marriage of Charles and Camilla, so he didn't have to navigate that, but there was the king's health and Harry departing his royal duties, and of course exile for Andrew. There's been a lot to manage.
There has been a lot to manage, and I was also, kind of reading everybody else, about how Harry famously, I believe, described him as the wasp. I think was the way that Harry described him. And I mean, I think what Harry's referring to is very much Clive does obviously control the people that have access to the king. Quite rightly, that's one of the roles. And I think maybe, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing maybe there was a bit of a blockade put up by Clive when everything was kind of happening between Harry, Meghan and the king, purely to protect the two things, protect the king, but also reality to protect the crown. What you've got to remember, these private secretaries and the people that make it run, and some of us forget this. Yes, you've got the king, you've got the queen, you've got the main players, if you like. But, even if you look back in time with Edward VIII wanting to marry Swallow Simpson, all the advisors, as well as the government, it was the palace advisors that actually stood up and said, no, you can't do this. So they do have quite a lot of power and quite a lot of persuasion when it comes to if it's needed. And I think with the Harry situation, he would have been there to, again, advise, very similar to what the king does with the Prime Minister. You're there to listen, you're there to give guidance and to advise.
All right, Grant, just before I let you go, I have to ask, as a former butler to the king, it's 10:30 at night. If I wanted to ask you to recommend a nightcap, what would you get the king?
Oh, in the evening?
Yeah, this kind of time, I want to unwind.
I think you'd go for a nice chamomile tea or a mint tea or something quite smooth and relaxing to finish the day off.
Duchy Originals?
Oh, of course. What else? Is there anything else?
Good to speak to you, Grant. Grant Harrold there, former butler for King's Charles and host of the new podcast, Royals Uncensored.
Joining me here in the studio, Kate Mansey, royal editor at The Times. Hello, Kate.
Hello.
Just tell us about the significance of this. Not everyone necessarily will have heard of Sir Clive Alderton. How important has he been to the king?
Well, he's been described today as a ringmaster of the king's reign, and although he might not be a household name, he's somebody who is hugely influential and powerful within what's called the Golden Triangle, so liaising between the palace, cabinet office and foreign office. And I think he's kind of crucial, really, to everything. He's been given plaudits for the transition, as it's known, going from the previous reign of Queen Elizabeth II to King Charles III. We saw him in the procession behind the late Queen's coffin during the funeral, state funeral for Elizabeth II. And he really, it's hard really to underplay the importance of his role. So this is a huge change at the palace because he's stepping down, we're told, around the time of his 60th birthday next May. I'm sure he'll go on to take lots of lucrative positions on various boards. And in a message today to other palace staff, he said that it's been a huge, a huge part of his role. It's been a huge honour to have served, but that it's one that he will continue to do informally for the rest of his life.
Well, that's fascinating because obviously for Charles himself, King Charles, it's going to be quite a loss, isn't it? Because presumably after so many years in that role, he will have built up quite a relationship, even when Sir Clive was working previously for his mother, the Queen.
Yeah, you see him at every time Charles is out in public or on a foreign state visit. Sir Clive Alderton is never far away. He's always in the background in the pictures, and although people might not recognise him as such, he's somebody who's always there. So, for example, when we went to the US for the state visit, Sir Clive was very much key to those landmark speeches that the King gave at Congress, if you remember. And also when he first went to Germany, Charles gave a historic speech, becoming the first monarch to address the German Bundestag. And after he came down from the stage, he went, and the first person he shook hands with and patted on the back was Sir Clive. He was somebody who helps put those speeches together. He's the person who collates that red box every day of government papers that's then sent for the King's attention. He's the man who welcomes the new Prime Minister at the door of Buckingham Palace when he goes in for that first audience, and he's crucial. He's there at every single stage. He was seated next to Sir Keir Starmer during the 2024 state banquet at Buckingham Palace, just over a week before Sir Keir Starmer won the election. So who he's sitting next to at the banquets is interesting, where he's manoeuvring, who he's talking to, because he really is such a powerful figure. Now they're going to throw that out. There's obviously a vacancy. A former staff member said to me today, the one thing you will be required to have is huge diplomatic experience, great knowledge of world affairs, but also a sense of humour to get on with the King and Queen.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a role, isn't it? And not just get on with the King and Queen, but all the tensions within the royal family.
Well, that's right. I mean, one of the great things, as we speak to people in the palace, say, is that he's helped with, Prince Harry, the issues with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So Sir Clive not only has been doing these sort of big level state occasions, but he's been working behind the scenes to smooth over those family relationships too.
Kate Mansey, Royal Editor at The Times. Really good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us for that breaking news.
Pleasure.